Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Ablow. This is another Pain to Power video. And this one starts with a question because I'm borrowing it from the playwright Martha Bessing, who said that. She said, the question before all of us is whether to hold on or drop the mask. What's she talking about? Well, the great psychiatrist Hervey Cleckley used to talk about the mask of sanity, that people would pretend to conform, pretend to have thoughts just like everyone else in order to be accepted. Even people who had rather bizarre thoughts would do that, had that capacity to do that. Even sociopaths can pretend to be normal, okay? But what that also means is that the rest of us have that inborn capacity too. We can create masks. And man, we do that because starting at a very tender age, the beginning of our lives, when we're really in need of love and support and nurturance, we're like Geiger counters, we're like divining rods, finding out, well, what will please other people? How am I going to get praise? How am I going to win people over? You compete with siblings for attention. You figure out who's going to be praised in class. You try not to be the person not chosen for teams in the schoolyard. And it just keeps going and going and going. And then you have to have this or that, the right courses, the right resume, the right rap in terms of what you say to people in order to be accepted. And it turns into, too frequently, a mask. And as the playwright Bessing was saying, it turns into a mask for all of us. So that the question before all of us becomes, are you going to keep wearing that mask or let it drop? And what that would mean is pursuing what you love in the world, saying what you think about issues and ideas and creative thoughts, reaching out for the relationships you really want, embracing those elements of social convention that you think are very wise and not embracing those that you don't, and taking people into your inner circle who you feel like you can trust enough to be yourself and to not have to posture, pose, or act. Remember, the comedy, tragedy, masks, and drama. Why are they masks? Well, they're masks because people are acting who they are really in a play, unless you're using, like I suppose, some sort of acting method where you're channeling elements of yourself. You're sad because you went through something, so you gotta drag that up out of yourself. But otherwise, it doesn't matter really what you believe about a situation. You ought to be able to act the opposite as an actor. What does that say? It says we have this really weird capacity to not be ourselves. Perhaps it's an evolutionary survival mechanism, but it can also come back to bite us because living an inauthentic life just won't work. People get depressed and anxious and they don't manifest the greatest things that they could. You can't run a company to its heights if you're faking because your heart's not really in it. You can't create a wonderful novel if you're posing as a romance writer when you really would rather be writing historical fiction because that's who you are. You can't be a true friend if you're not true to yourself, because what do you have to offer? It's like having counterfeit currency and trying to buy a loaf of bread. Well, maybe you'll buy one, but you might not be able to buy two because they'll be wise to you. So I think it's a useful question that the playwright poses, that each of us has to decide whether to drop the mask. You can't drop it all at once. That's very tough to do. But I'll tell you, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier. So this is true for anyone who is trying to be in the wrong profession, trying to maintain a relationship that just won't work, and you know it, and it's not based on a loving connection, it's based on something that's toxic. It's true for anyone who is efforting anything in the world where they're not really feeling at one with it. Some of this is about avoiding things too. Wearing the mask can be about pivoting away from your destiny. If you're supposed to run for office, you better run for office, because you're not going to be happy, because it's in your marrow. It's the way in which you're going to express yourself, and the universe or God or both have a way of extracting that from you. And so if you're what Robert Pirsig, the great author of Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, called an ego climber, just climbing from one thing to another because you want to sustain a false sense of self, your ego, you'll always be, as he says, an instrument out of adjustment. When you start being you, dropping the mask and being authentic, everything starts to click. It may not be easy, but the toughest roads are the ones that you don't even mean to be on, and you don't want to be there. You can climb a pretty jagged peak and get to the top. You might get cut, right? But that effort is authentic and genuine. And therefore you can bear a lot more because you have integrity. You have yourself. Never give it up. It makes everything 10 times or 1,000 times harder. In fact, it makes it impossible. So I think Martha Bessing is correct. Before every one of us is the choice. Will we drop the mask? The pain to power pathway involves just that, in stages perhaps, but ultimately completely dropping the mask.